Hey, Mike.
Hi.
So, let's start with, I always kind of like to start with personal stuff, so just so everybody knows, we're going to talk a little bit about Mike as a person and go through some of his background and maybe talk to him about product as well as some of his opinions as an investor. So let's start with you. How did you get started in business before, like pre-Figo? Like the beginning of your career, how did you get started?
I've been in the tech industry, the internet industry, since 1996, where I first started my career in Zip Davis Publishing. If anyone's ever heard of that place, but we used to publish computer magazines, Computer Shopper and PC Magazine and PC Week, and so my goal after college was to be the publisher of one of those magazines, because I was told that if you were the publisher of PC Magazine, you could make $1 million a year. You could have a penthouse apartment on Park Avenue, and they gave you a limousine and a driver. And those all sound like really, really good things to aspire to have. And so after college, I didn't want to go to Wall Street. I didn't want to go to law school. I was fairly technical for a person coming out of college at that time. My father's a computer scientist and has been my entire life, and started writing programs in the 60s on mainframes. And so I was the one kid in the neighborhood that had these weird contraptions in our house no one could understand. And when people asked me what my dad did, I used to say, he's in computers. But I wasn't interested in programming, and so I never became a developer. I was one of the few people in my family that didn't take that route. And so I went the computer magazine route, which seemed more akin to my personality and more suitable to my personality. And then about 3 years into my stint at Zip Davis, this thing called the internet started to happen, and my dad and other family members said, if I was your age, I would run, not walk, and do this internet thing, because it's going to be big someday. And so that's why I got into it.
Because you thought it was going to be big.
Yeah, I believed from day one that it was going to be big. And I know there's probably some people in this room that remember the mid-90s when people were talking about the internet. They were talking about it as being faddish. People didn't believe it. They didn't think it was really going to happen. They didn't think that real business was going to get done. There was a lot of there were a lot of naysayers. But I saw IBM and Cisco and Microsoft and all these massive companies investing billions of dollars, so I believed it, hook, line, and sinker. So I went to a company called Juno. If anyone remembers, it could have been your first email address. Juno was a great startup. Based here in New York. It was run by a billionaire hedge fund guy named David Shaw. And someone will write a book about it someday, but that's where Jeff Bezos came from. Came from D.B. Shaw. The father of Google AdSense, Gokul Rajaram, came from D.B. Shaw. Joel Spolsky of Stack Overflow. Joel on Software came from D.B. Shaw. Myself, and a bunch of others. There's the Juno Mafia. No one's ever coined that phrase, but there is a Juno Mafia, and it's alive and well here in New York City. And that's where I went for my entry into the internet space.
So fast forward and take us to, I love the Figo Story. So I don't know if anyone's ever heard it or seen Mike's been on some other panels where he's talked about this story, but I think it's a great story of how you were recruited to Figo and then the whole process in which you ultimately sold the company. Do you want to go through that story so that people can hear?
Yeah, it was 2002, and the bubble had burst. And I was working at IAC at the time, Interactive Corp. At the time it was called USA Networks, Barry Diller's company. And it was, frankly, to be honest, it was a place for me to sort of hide until the market came back. And I kind of knew that search was going to be one of the main catalysts that would drive sort of Web 2.0. I feel like we're in Web 3.0 right now, and it's all about social and communication and sharing. 2.0 is all about search, monetization, commerce. And so I started to watch what was happening with Google and around the ecosystem that was forming around Google. It was a very powerful ecosystem. Someone called me up and and said, there are these two guys in Israel building this search engine that crawls the web and extracts, information in Arabic and tries to translate it to English and all this kind of stuff. They're working with clandestine governments but they're trying to turn it into a business and it's not working out and they need help. And so I said, geez, I don't know anything about Israel, I don't know anything about Arabic, I don't know anything about what these guys are doing, enterprise software, but let me take a look. I took a look and realized that it was pretty serious technology and that these guys had a desire to turn it into a big company. They just didn't know what to do. And so I quit my job. I moved into some roach-infested office on 8th Avenue and 38th Street. And they had the big roaches, not the little ones. And we set up shop, and we just basically took this technology that was meant for something completely different, and we turned it into, at first we turned it into a search engine marketing platform that allowed advertisers big advertisers with big websites to pump their content into the search engines. We got that up to about $20 million a year in revenue, and then we saw that Google was getting into the text ad business, Google AdSense famously, and we had technology that could compete with that product. And so we made a really crazy and courageous decision to go into that business. And everyone thought that was crazy, and stupid, and dangerous, and reckless. But we saw an opening in the marketplace. We saw that what Google was doing was basically auctioning off a keyword and then taking that same advertiser and sticking it on a page and basically charging the same price. And certain pages were worth probably less, and certain pages were worth a lot more. And so I went to David Blue at Not.com. Anyone know that site? And I said, I'm going to compete with Google. I'm building an ad system that will essentially auction off text ads on content pages. And I said, how would you like it if I could auction off your wedding ring pages for $25 a click? That sounds interesting to you. And he said, you can do that? And I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. And he said, great, I hate Google. Let's do it. And he was my first real big publisher. And we used him to sign brides.com and weddingchannel.com. And we started to talk about starting, narrow into the marketplace. We started with just wedding sites. And then we edged out into travel and sports and all these other sites. And we made a bunch of really important decisions. We decided to stick with just the premium segment of the marketplace. Long story short, we got up to about 3 billion ads a day. Anyone that knows anything about the scalability of services or scaled services, that is a massive service. We had 1,200 servers in production in 3 different data centers across the world. That was back when you had to build all that nasty stuff yourself. We didn't have the cloud back then, not one that we trusted. And so we built this massive system. We got up to about 110 employees, 3 offices, $75 million in revenue, a real company. And eventually we were acquired by AOL for $340 million.
But initially they asked you, how much did they want you to sell the company for initially?
So look, it took 5.5 years, and so this event's called Startup Grind. I am a living, breathing example of the grind that it really is. To me, it is a terrible ordeal and process to go through to build a company. And the thing that made it extra hard, reflecting and looking back, is that I had to compete with Google every day. And most people don't do that, and most people don't do it in one of their core revenue streams, core revenue lines. I did that. I competed against them in one of their core revenue lines. Didn't understand the significance of it at the time, but it was like going against this massive buzzsaw every second of every day. So when I first took over the company as CEO, they said to me, look, we pumped $2 million in this thing. If you can get a couple $1 million back, if you can get $5 to $10 million back, we'll be thrilled. We'll give you a big chunk of that. You'll be rich. You'll be excited. You'll be happy. And so I said, look, I'm going to do the best job I can. I have no idea what's going to happen. But we went about our business, and within about 6 months, of building the product. A guy from Overture at the time, a company called Overture, which later was acquired by Yahoo for $1.6 billion. A guy named Joseph Essex came to us and said, hey, can you just use your technology to serve ads on content pages? And we said, yeah, we think we could do that. So we started to fiddle around with it. We couldn't actually do it at the time, but we lied and said we could. And within about 2 weeks, we had a working prototype, and they came to us and said, that's pretty good. Would you guys think about licensing it, or better yet, maybe we should just buy you guys? And I said, okay. So I got on a plane and went out there and sat down in Pasadena, California to talk to them, and they said, look, we really like what you're doing, and we need to compete against Google, and Google just acquired the only other company in the world that has credible technology, a company called Applied Semantics at the time. So would you guys sell? And I said, well, I guess. What do you have in mind? What's the price? So they said, we'll get back to you in a little while. I got back on a plane, and a couple of days later, someone calls me up and says, we're thinking about a number between $8 and $10 million. And of course, I put the phone down. I'm like, holy crap! 6 months into this thing, this guy's willing to pay us $8 to $10 million for a product that it's not even functionally useful yet. You can't put it into production. You can't really use it. And so I was really excited. I felt like I achieved my goal. I called up the main investor in the company and I said, hey Jack, you're never going to believe this. These guys are willing to pay us, I think, up to $10 million. And he said, well, that's great, but no chance. No way in the world that we sell this company. And I said, well, what do you mean? You said $10 million, that was the goal. And he said, well, gosh, if they're willing to pay you $10 million, they're probably willing to pay you $20 million. You just got to wait another 6 months. And so we didn't sell the company, thankfully. We went about our business of building it, and that second offer never came. We turned them into a customer and started to build the business. About 18 months later, I had a similar meeting with a guy named Ross Levinson and Heather Hardy. Heather Hardy became the CEO of TechCrunch. And we were sitting in a room in Los Angeles, ironically, and they slid a paper across the desk and said, we're really interested in buying you guys. The max we can pay is $175 million. And I about jumped out of my chair and couldn't believe it. I happened to have been with a board member at the time, a guy named Bob Davis, who's a partner at Highland Capital. And I said, oh crap, I'm kicking him under the table. And you can imagine heart palpitating. And said, let us go out in the hallway and talk about this. So I went out there. I was like, holy crap, Bob, can you believe this? $175 million? I go, this is insane. He goes, no chance. He's like, we're gonna fight them and try to get $225 million. The board's not behind an offer at $175 million. It's set for $225. So I got on a plane and went back to New York, and of course, a second offer never came. Because they were serious about 175 being the final offer. The thing that was fascinating about this aspect of the story is that by the time I got home, a lot of my team members found out that I had, in essence, rejected a $175 million offer. And they were there with lanterns and pitchforks and lots of other sharp implements waiting for me. And I'm dead serious. They were extremely upset. They thought I had overplayed my hand. I had really screwed things up. We were never going to be better than we were that day. We couldn't keep this up against Google. We're one press release away from being annihilated. That was the mindset of the company. Google could just flip the switch and change a few things and flip a few dials, and we're out of business. And so we got to go back. And I remember one of my guys. I won't tell you who it is. You guys all know this person. Came to me and said, look, you're overplaying your hand, you're going to lose half the team. They think you're crazy, they think you're hyperbolic, all this kind of stuff. You've got to fix this. You got to go back and take the offer. And I said, I can't do it, the board's not behind it, and there is no second offer. I did my best, and I have, we're still growing by 50, 60% a year. I don't think that's going to stop. So, get a hold of yourself, I basically said to him, I have more confidence in the team than the team has in itself. And acquiescing to the angry mob is not leadership, and I'm not going to buckle under the pressure because there are a few visionless people on this team. Sadly, that episode, one of the most troubling episodes ever in my career, because I thought people would be excited, and instead they were very upset, caused me to lose a bunch of my key people. Now, one of the untold stories of Figo was we had probably one of the best tech teams to ever grace the city of New York. I had hired the sitting CTO of eBay, a guy named Marty Abbott. He brought his best friend from West Point, a guy named Michael Fisher, who was the sitting head of engineering at PayPal. And they brought two of the top engineers from eBay, who happened to be the number 4 and number 6 engineers from Apple Computer. And they brought all their friends. And so I brought about 10 to 12 of the top engineers in the world from Silicon Valley to New York, and had them here for basically the entire time. And so we built an extraordinary team. Now, one of those leaders ended up leaving because of this episode, along with a few of the other people in the tech team, because they just thought that we had peaked. Things were never going to get better, and they were going to look for the next shiny new object, and we weren't it anymore in their eyes. And then, of course, this was in late 2005. Fast forward to 2006, we get to about the end of the year, and I had my last board meeting of the year, and I went in and I said, we've got to sell this company. Now's the time. I said, and I was thinking very locally at the time. I said, the real estate market makes no sense. I can't even buy an apartment. The prices in Manhattan are crazy. They're going up like 1% a month. Like this is not right. And I'm fearful that there's going to be a real estate recession, and that it's going to drag the entire economy down. And so we should sell before that happens. And my board was like, no way, not a single economist in the world is predicting a recession, and all this kind of stuff. But they eventually realized that I was dead serious, and my legs were getting tired, as they say. And so we decided to call Goldman Sachs, and we called Goldman Sachs in. And at the time, we had Microsoft and Yahoo and AOL sniffing around and making overtures about the company. And we basically turned that energy into an auction process, which led 6 months later to the sale of the company. So that's kind of how we did it. And one of the interesting things about that process was we had an auction, and within 2 rounds of getting bids from our buyers, they all disappeared. They all went away. So we went from having a viable sale process, an auction process, to having no auction process and no buyer. And that was really scary. About halfway through the process, Goldman Sachs had tipped off all the buyers that, hey, this company's going to sell for $500 million. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And we told them not to do that, but they did it. And it basically scared away Yahoo. And AOL found out that Yahoo got scared away, and they called us up and said, what the hell's going on here? We don't think there's anyone else in this process, so we're pulling out. And we ended up having no sale, no deal, no anything, and a completely dejected and demoralized workforce. Now, luckily, I had put, about 3 months prior to this, I had placed one person on my advisory board. I had an advisory board. I had one person on it. It was the former EVP of Time Warner, Time Inc., a guy named Jack Hare, who happened to have been golf buddies with the president of AOL. And I put him on my advisory board because I knew they were buddies, and I knew AOL was a likely buyer of the company someday. So I called Jack up and I said, "You're never going to believe this. The deal is dead. We're not getting acquired." He's like, "What do you mean? What happened?" I thought AOL was going to be the winner. And I said, "Yeah, but they disappeared. The process broke down, and I think it's overpriced." And he said, "Well, it just happens to be that I'm playing golf with a guy named Mike Kelly on Sunday." Mike Kelly was the president of AOL at the time. He goes, "What do you want me to say to him, if anything?" And I said, "Just tell him that we're not as far apart as he thinks. We can get something done." And so he ends up playing golf with Mike Kelly. Then that Monday morning, I get a call from Anisha Kumar, who's the CFO of AOL, and she says, "Hey, we're going to spend 24 hours negotiating man-to-man with you. Get rid of your bankers and your advisors and everyone else, because they're just screwing this thing up. And if we can get a deal done, a handshake in 24 hours, you got a deal." And I called up my board and I said, "Holy crap, this thing's back on. I got back on the phone, I negotiated the price up. At the time, the price was $320 million. I got it $340 million, and then I said, hey, by the way, you wouldn't mind if we got to keep our cash, would you? And she said, no, you get some cash in the bank, no problem. So I said, oh, great, that's awesome. So I went back and I said, hey, we got a deal, we can keep our cash. She calls me up a few hours later and goes, by the way, how much cash do you have in the bank? And I go, 21 million. And she said, oh, I didn't know that. I said, well, yeah, we had raised $21 million about 6 months ago. And so it ended up being really $361 million, but that's how the deal got done. And it was a crazy process. By the way, it leads to a host of issues that we all grapple with as entrepreneurs and founders and CEOs these days. I was marginally profitable as a company. 6 months prior, I knew I was going to be acquired, and I still went out and raised $20 million. So I had a huge war chest of cash in the bank. The reason why I did that is because I didn't need it, but I also didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what was lurking around the corner. Was there a recession coming? And if there was a recession coming, was I going to get acquired or not? If I didn't get acquired and the recession did come, and I knew I had a bunch of really tired people on my team, I was probably going to have to swap out a lot of my senior people. Right? I was going to basically have to rebuild the entire company. And so that would have taken a lot of money. And so I had raised a ton of cash simply because I didn't know what was going to happen in the world. And consequently, what happened was I ended up sending it back out to all the investors as a dividend, essentially. And so basically, everyone got the money back. So it wasn't a tragedy dilution-wise or anything like that. But it raises a lot of questions. You always want a lot more money than you really need, but sometimes you don't know what you really need. And so I'm kind of a contrarian when it comes to raising money and worrying about dilution and all that kind of stuff. Believe me, when I got to that finish line and that wire transfer hit my bank account, I was not worrying about the percentage points that I lost previously in previous capital raises. I was just damn excited that it happened and feeling extremely fortunate.
Okay, so let's move on to what's been going on in your new company, Hashable. And Hashable was actually tracked before.
No, it was a business site. We were building a business site and then shut that down and built Hashable, so it was done.
Okay, so from Hashable, let's talk about product, because obviously, when Hashable first came out, it was much more social, and it's really moved into a different product, which you don't like to call pivot.
It's not a pivot. We're building a mobile CRM. We were always straddling the fence between utility and social, and basically I just shut down the social stuff and doubled down on the utility. And we're a couple weeks away from launching the best mobile address book in the world, kind of like Evernote for people information. It syncs across all screens. We eliminated the duplicate record problem that most of us have with our phones. And we made all the information about all the people you know in the world searchable from one interface. It's an extremely useful product that almost everybody in this room that has an Android phone or an iPhone will use because it's dramatically better than what you have on your phones today. And I wanted to get to that position a year ago, but there were a bunch of people on the team that didn't want to build that product. It's a process.
So in your mind, when you first started and you started building, you knew that this is where you wanted to take it, but there was a strategy. Was it a marketing strategy, or what made the initial product come out the way it came out?
One of the things, so I raised money from Union Square Ventures, and they've given me a little bit of advice, not a ton of advice. They're basically hands-off, especially if you've had success previously. And one of the pieces of advice they gave me, I won't tell you who gave it to me, they basically said, look, you've been very successful. You cast a very long shadow in this industry and among the people you work with. Don't smother them. Hire great people still. Listen to those great people. And try not to be overbearing or try not to smother them. And so I said, okay, I'm going to be extra deferential so that I don't smother my really smart people. And so what I did is, in doing that, I made what I feel like was a mistake, and I kind of lost my myself, my own vision about where I really wanted to take this. And I over-compromised and I over-negotiated the vision. And you can't do that. You cannot do that. It's a bad idea. It's always a bad idea. If it comes out well for you, you got lucky, I think. And so I let some strong voices on the team negotiate me into a position that I was not comfortable with, but I fixed it. Benefited me raising a lot of money, but I have time to fix things. So.
I want to talk about something that we also talk about a lot, which is work ethic and hiring. And the idea that the first people that you have on, and now you have new people, and the upgrading as things go on, or people not working out, etc. I think hiring is something that a lot of people have trouble with, especially at startups. So can you give some advice to people that are hiring in terms of how they should be interviewing, or negotiating tips, or things that they should be looking out for? Pitfalls?
If you're a CEO or a CTO or a founder, you should always be hiring. You should always be recruiting people that are relevant to your project. Even if you can't afford to hire that person at that exact moment in time, you should always have a list of people that you want to hire if something happens. I mean, you raise some more money, you land a customer that you didn't expect to land, you generated some extra revenue you didn't expect to generate, something happens, something positive happens, and you've got to step on the brakes. You should have a list of people in your pocket that you want to hire, that you can hire. And so it's a the number one job for the CEO is to always be hiring and always keep the gas tank full, money-wise. You want to keep the tank full. You always want 12 to 18 months of cash, and I believe, and you always want a list of people that you can hire, even if you can't afford them at that exact moment in time. So look, if you can't persuade a person to come work for you, you cannot persuade a company to pay you $50 or $100 million to buy your company. I mean, that is a sales process. Hiring someone is a sales process. It's recruiting someone that doesn't want to work for you, that doesn't know anything about you, that doesn't understand your product, that doesn't get your vision, and then talking that person into working for you is a difficult process. If you can't do it, you can't run a company.
Let's put on your other hat now as an investor, and talk a little bit about your general thoughts about investing, or your kind of top things that come to mind when you are looking at companies, and what are the key things for you? And
I'm an investor in 70 companies, 70. I can't.
What's your favorite?
I can't name them all.
What's your favorite?
I don't really have any favorites.
Come on.
I really don't. I mean, I have surprises.
Give us a surprise.
So, they're the two companies that are probably the most successful and happen to be the two biggest surprises. The first company is Clout, K-L-O-U-T. You guys have all heard of it before. I had no idea what was going to happen with that company. I had no idea that they would end up with hundreds of thousands of new signups a month, which is what's happening. I had no idea that people were going to blog incessantly about how stupid Clout was. I had no idea that was just going to drive more people to use it. A lot of people in this room probably don't know this, but Mark Benioff is using Clout in a lot of his social media tools. Sir Richard Branson just invested in Clout and is using it to rank all Virgin customer service queues. Basically every hotel in Las Vegas now is using it privately in their CRM system, point of sale CRM system, to determine who they're giving upgrades to. Now, none of us have to like it, but that's what's happening. It's a fact. It's a reality. They just raised money at a $200 million valuation. I own more than 1% of the company. I'm the only angel investor that didn't sell, so I'm either really stupid or really smart. Kleiner Perkins just came in and invested. I didn't sell. So I'm very surprised by Clout. I thought Clout was going to get bought for $10 million by Twitter 2 years ago, which is why I invested. And so there you go. And then the other one that a lot of the developers, mobile developers in this room, all work with is Flurry. One of the largest angel investors in Flurry. Flurry, as you know, is handling something like 13,000 data events a second. Talk about scale and big data. They are in the top 10 in the world in terms of the amount of data they're collecting on a daily basis. It's absolutely extraordinary. They have, I think they're on 30% of all smartphones, of all Android and iPhones in the world. It is an absolutely massive story. They're going to do north of 100 million in revenue this year. They're a very large company. I own about 1.5% of that company as well.
So when someone comes in to see you for the first time, what are the things that strike you in terms of the things that are the hot? And obviously there are the standard things that everyone looks for, but are there any particular things for you that are special about people or ideas or?
I'm big on work ethic and people that are going to sit in their office at the whiteboard all day, are not going to run around town backslapping and going from beer event to beer event. I just don't believe in that. I don't believe that you can have balance.
Or at a networking event,
I know, I'm sorry. I do not believe in balance. I'm sorry, I just don't think it's possible to have a balanced life and be very successful in this industry at the same time. So when I was running Figo, I stopped drinking, I put off having kids, I stopped playing golf, I stopped seeing my best friends, I made enormous sacrifices. I was in the office at 9 in the morning every day, I left the office at about 9 at night every day, I worked every Saturday afternoon. I would duck out once in a while and go for a run, that sort of thing, so I'm not saying I was a robot. I wasn't a robot, but I worked excessively, and I felt like I had to do that. I had no choice. And so I look for people that are willing to work their butts off. If you can find balance and build a multi-hundred million or billion-dollar company, you are an extraordinary person. I don't think many people can do that. And so I look for people that are just willing to kill themselves. Reese Pacheco is a guy, some of you probably know in this room. I didn't think his company was amazing. I didn't think his idea was amazing. But I invested in him because he slept at his office. He slept in cars. He was sleeping on people's couches. He was sleeping in his office night after night after night, and then going to the gym and shower. And he's an excellent cross player. I'm an excellent cross player. So I knew the guy was a hard worker, and I knew he was gonna figure out how to scrape together and come up with something that was at least mildly successful. I wanted to help him do that because he had the right attitude and the right work ethic. I don't always do that. I mean, I can't afford to do that all the time, but I did it in that particular case. But look, I mean, someone has to have a good idea. The idea is going to change. Does that person have the guts and the courage to tough it out? I tell anyone I invest in, it's going to be expect a 5-year slog. Not 2 years, not 3 years, 5 years. At least 5 years of disappointment, of ups and downs, of heartbreak. I mean, people that you thought were really good people becoming massive human resources disappointments. I mean, the things that happen, to me would curl the hair on your head. I mean, it's just the stuff that, and the thing that's interesting is the more successful you get, the more the problems emerge and get bigger. Why? Because of greed. Right? The more successful your company becomes, bigger the knives are that start coming out. And it's really a fascinating and very tiring process. But in this day and age where you can pivot very quickly and change your business model and change your idea within a few months, perseverance, guts, courage. I mean, do you have the stamina? Right? Most people don't. Most people don't have the guts or the courage to get to the end. It's very hard.
So then what do you think about so many people being funded?
Look, there's a lot of money sloshing around. There have been a lot of successful people in this town and in Silicon Valley. Those people are investing because tech is one of the few organically growing industries in the world. You know, we are feeding people in this room and in Silicon Valley are feeding the addiction, the addiction to smartphones, the addiction to the web worldwide. And so there's this massive bull market going on. I think it's going to last for another 20 years. I think there'll be plenty of hiccups along the way. As goes Facebook, I think goes this industry in a lot of ways. I think there's a ton essentially being passed from Google to Facebook with this Facebook IPO. You know, Google has kind of propped up the industry for the last 10 years and created the coattails and the ecosystem. And I think now Facebook's doing that. If Facebook has a great IPO and starts nailing their quarters, this thing's going to keep going. And if they don't, watch out. Because this thing will dry up really fast.
So what advice would you give to people that are raising money right now?
Be damn sure that you have a good idea. Be damn sure that you have the right people to execute against that idea. Be intellectually flexible. And you want to be successful, but you know, some of those variables in that equation are probably going to change. Be intellectually flexible in making those changes. Narrow the idea as much as possible. When you don't have a lot of capital, narrow the idea as early as possible is a critical thing to do. And sometimes it's counterintuitive. I just had a conversation with someone 2 hours ago. He came in with this deck. Great guy, very smart guy. Came in with this deck and he said, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And I said, well, how are you going to get all the people over that first hump? The first hump, there was so much friction. He just intellectualized and assumed that everyone was going to play ball. And I said, well, what if you don't? You don't have a lot of money. If you can't get people to get past over that first hump, none of that other stuff that you want them to do is going to work. So why don't you narrow your idea and just think about fashioning your business model around that, getting people over that first hump, and then worry about all the fancy stuff. And if you're constrained, capital constrained, you've got to do that. And it's really hard because in a lot of ways you're thinking and worrying about all the things that are coming next and all the opportunities that you're missing. And it's very hard, especially if you're older, if you're in your 30s or 40s, you're thinking about all those things around the corner. In a lot of ways, that baggage is hurting your ability to get narrow and make it small. And it's a very hard thing to learn. I mean, I've had to learn it with Hashable. It's very hard because you tend to overthink things, and you've got to trick yourself. You basically have to trick yourself into understanding that less is more.
All right, I want to open this up to questions because I think there are probably a lot of questions, and I want to leave plenty of time for that. So, anybody want to kick it off? Come on. Actually, where's the Amy? Hi.
Hi.
Greetings, go.
I'm close to the.
Yeah, maybe you can just speak up.
Oh, and everyone's here.
I'm from New York. I can talk loud.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, hi, Maggie. Earlier you were talking about when you were asked if you could do something in your earlier startup, and you were like, yeah, and you had no idea how to do it, but then you just did it. And what I see that a lot in startups, and I just kind of wondered what your advice is to startups in that. If you kind of have an inkling that it's something that you might be able to do, but it's not something you're able to do yet, was that too much of a risk, or is it a good risk to take if you're pretty sure you can do it?
Depends on the situation, right? We were bending and twisting our technology for the top customer or the number 2 customer in our segment of the marketplace, and we knew we could reuse it, right? And so you never want to get dragged down the rat hole of building something custom for a customer, that you can't reuse later on, that's a huge mistake. It almost always turns into a disaster. But if you know there's a reasonable chance that that customer is going to use that product, and you can sell it to 20 other, or 50 other, or 100 other, then you should do it. It's worth it. It's a bird in the hand. And by the way, it leads to my belief that B2B companies are easier than B2C, right? You can you have that customer, that bird in your hand, right? They can talk to you, you can talk to them. It's not black magic as to where you hit the buttons and all that kind of stuff, right? You don't have to get every single pixel right. I mean, you can use your power of personal persuasion to get that first customer over the finish line. And then if that customer is like lots of other customers, you can probably reuse that work and sell it 20 other times or 1,000 other times. And so, if you're looking for things, if you're sitting around looking for things to do, I mean, one piece of advice I would give you is B2B. Don't try to build another niche little something that's B2C. I mean, we are kind of late in what feels like late-ish in the cycle for certain categories and subcategories. The world doesn't need another Facebook, it doesn't need another Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. But Mark Benioff Mark Benioff's the founder of Salesforce.com, did a session with Charlie Rose several months ago, and they asked him, what's the next big thing in social? Because he knows Mark Benioff's got this childlike excitement about social. And he said, it's not two kids in a garage in Palo Alto building the next Facebook. That game is over. It's not two guys building the next Google or Twitter. Those games are over. It's two guys in a garage trying to figure out how to build, how to take those interfaces, and those types of services, and those style of services to the enterprise, and to mobile, and to businesses that are way behind. Remember, think about it, businesses are just starting to figure out how to use the web, right? And now we're all using, these high-speed computers called phones. They're called smartphones, right? And companies have no freaking clue. We're spending more time staring at these screens now than we are the web. And that happened really fast. Companies are just starting to get comfortable with the web, right? In a wholesale way, right across the board. And now this thing is eclipsing the web. So who are the people? B2B is never going to get you on the cover of Time magazine, probably, but it will make you rich.
Question. Hi, thanks so much. I'm working in the healthcare vertical, in the healthcare IT vertical, and right now we have 5 dental offices with a combined of 10,000 patients for research and development and prototyping purposes. But I also have the potential of bringing on board another 100 dental offices for research and development purposes and prototyping. My only concern, though, is that obviously I'm restricting capital and legwork. And so what is an acceptable number that we need to identify for prototyping purposes?
I don't know what you mean by prototyping purposes.
Sure, so for example, research and development, understanding specifically...
Do you have an actual product?
Yes, we're building it.
Okay.
But one of the most important things, however, is that it's very important for us to identify if the assumptions that we're making based on what the client wants are correct. And the only way that we're going to be able to identify that is if we test them out. We have to test them out.
Yeah, but if you talk to too many customers, you're likely to hear everything, meaning anything and everything. You talk to 10 different customers, you're going to get 10 different versions of where you should put that button in, what reports you should have, everything else. And so there is such thing as over-analysis, right? Of asking too many customers, too many questions. Look, if you're in B2B, I think 1 to 5 customers is enough. You get feedback and information from 1 to 5 customers with a little bit of diversity within that customer set, and you pretty much, if you're a good listener, you've heard everything you need to hear. If you start talking to too many customers, you're just going to get confused.
Okay, thank you. And then from a valuation table, you can go to the table and speak to the investor and say, hey, you know what, we reached out to 5 customers. Here are our findings, here's our potential market. So we will then position ourselves well for an investor. They will see that as positive.
Well, I mean, depending, what's the product, what's the market opportunity? Are you talking to a segment of the marketplace? Or is it a product that they'll pay a lot for? I mean, there's a lot of questions still. But I'm not a big believer in over-analysis. I mean, I think you talk to a few customers, you talk to, most companies have real needs, right? They have real needs and real requirements. What you want to do is you want to talk to 2 or 3 that have those needs, try to get them to agree to a common set of requirements, at least enough of the variables, make sure that there's enough of a common thread that ties those customers together, and then you go build it, right? If you know there's a market there, you go build it. And if you build it and those customers come back and buy that service, you'll find an investor, no problem.
Great, thank you.
More questions?
My quick question for you, well, a couple of questions. If you wouldn't mind sharing additional experiences from your pivot in Hashable, what else? And if you have any pieces that drive both your investment decision, but also when you see the opportunities, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so with Hashable, I mean, it was very simple. We were trying to change behavior instead of solving the problem. But half my team came to me and said, look, if someone uses Hashable, it essentially builds another shitty address book. That's in effect what the service does for you. And instead of us taking the pain of actually solving the mobile address book problem, which a lot of us have. And so we made a decision about 7 months ago to stop building social features, stop building game mechanics, and build the best mobile address book in the world, one that's search-based, one that syncs across all screens, one that is available offline or online, one that takes care of the duplicate records problem that most of us, I mean, I have an iPhone, my native address book is atrocious. It's near unusable. And so we fixed that problem. But we weren't solving the problem before, we were trying to create a new behavior. And that only lasts so long. And so that was an easy decision. It wasn't easy for my team, it was easy for me. I didn't care what they thought, frankly. I was going to force them to build something that was super useful. After they wrapped their heads around the enormity of the problem, they got excited about it. They wanted to be one of those people solving a problem. And so, we lost a few people. There were a few people on the team that didn't want to, frankly, I had one person say to me, it sounds very software-y, whatever that means. And I said, yeah, it's very software-y, you're right. But so to me, it was an easy decision. I wanted to build something that was solving a problem. In terms of investment, look, I invest in all kinds of companies. I look at the opportunity, I look at the people. Can they pull it off? Look, it's very few people ever go from what I call the whiteboard to the wire transfer, right? They go from conception phase to the end. Very few CEOs ever make that trek. Very few founders ever make that trek. People go to chairman, they step down to founder or to board member, or they want to spend more time with their family. There's all kinds of reasons why they get out of that hot kitchen, and it gets really hot. And so I look for people that want to stay in that kitchen, because it's not for the faint of heart. And I'm not talking about these little hack hires, right? So implicit in what I say is I want to invest in people that are hopefully going to build real companies, right? Once in a while you invest in something, like I said with cloud, I invested because I thought they're going to get acquired, right? That was crass and small of me. But for being honest, that's why I invested. I thought it was a shoo-in for an acquisition. And so I liked the guy that was running the company, and I just decided to throw in some money. But usually I try to go for companies that could be multi-$100-million companies, and that means building something serious. Facebook and Twitter and Google, and no one's going to come and pay hundreds of millions of dollars for 8 engineers, right? You got to build something substantial. and that's hard. So I look for people that I think can do that.
Glenda. Glenda. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had a quick question. If you could give some general overview based on all your experiences and also when you started with Hashable about ideation. So I'm in a phase right now where I get a lot of ideas. I don't know what really works. I'm always getting shut down. So a bit about that, some experiences would help. Thanks.
Look, I mean, if you don't have ideas, you're dead. I mean, so the whole thing starts with ideas, right? If you don't have ideas and/or money, you can't really do much. So I think it's great that you have a lot of ideas, and at some point, maybe one of them will be. Look, the way I've always got this, like I call it the jagged rock. I've got this jagged rock in my brain, and I'm always, moving it around, trying to make it comfortable, but it never gets comfortable. It's always annoying me and nagging me. And the way I think about it is I always have ideas, right? There's some small ideas, big ideas. If I wake up the next day and I think about it again, and then a week from now I'm still thinking about it, and a month from now I'm still thinking about it, there's probably something to it. There's probably something to it. But if they're fleeting, if you have an idea and the next day you wake up and you can't even remember what it was, it probably wasn't worth much. And so, I think ideas are good. I mean, it's good to have ideas. But look, I don't know if I believe in this sort of like mass production approach where get smart guy, put smart guy in a room next to whiteboard, have smart guy think, and then jot down notes about what smart guy thinks, and then out pops this amazing company. I mean, that's just not how it works. I just don't see that. Stuff happens more organically in most cases. I mean, not always. I mean, there's always the two kids from Harvard, boiled the ocean and came up with e-commerce.com, I mean, that happens. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, that happens. Those are a distinct minority, right? I mean, what happened with Figo was we were building an SEM business, which was not very glamorous, but could be profitable. And then we had an opportunity. We spotted an opportunity in the marketplace. Someone came to us and said, "Can you twist and turn your technology?" I saw it as a golden opportunity to compete with them and to compete with Google because I didn't think their business approach worked for the premium publishers in the world. And my thesis was correct. I was able to produce a product that proved my thesis correct. So that was all situational. I wasn't sitting at the whiteboard going, wonder what I should do today. You know what I mean? I just think that's contrived and potentially probably doomed for failure. But you need to have more organic experiences. Maybe go work at a company and develop a viewpoint, a point of view on what's going on in that particular segment of the industry. Watch what they're doing wrong. Go out and fix it.
In the front first, sorry. He's been waiting.
Oh my God, I must have said something good with more hands.
I know. That's always what happens, right? People get
Yes.
more brave.
My question to you is, as an investor, what's your view about the startup company which are using natural language semantics, natural language processing, computational linguistics kind of solution to bring up any solution, say duplicate records or...
I used artificial intelligence so he asked me what I think about startups that are using NLP, natural language processing, and other forms of artificial intelligence to solve problems. Look, I mean, does the technology fit the problem? I think that's the first question. Are you trying to kill an ant with a sledgehammer or not? Can you do it with regular expressions or some other library that's already been built out there? Or do you have to actually, artificial intelligence is not perfect and it needs lots of tender loving care and fine tuning. But look, I mean, it's just a set of logic, right? At the end of the day, and if you can use it to scale something, you should use it. It doesn't. The skill set doesn't grow on trees. There aren't a lot of people that are very good at it. But I think it's great if you have the right problem.
Sorry, we have to get people.
So when people think about a startup, generally it's about like starting from scratch. Do you have any thoughts on an early stage company identifying a company or a site or something like that that is completely like unmonetized? It's a huge opportunity as a strategy to like become a company, as like an acquisition strategy. Have you seen that work, or would you consider investing in that if someone brought that to you?
Give me a scenario. I'm not sure I understand.
Let's say there was like a site that got a lot of traffic that was just not monetized, and you came up with a new way to monetize it like really, really well.
Yeah.
And you wanted to buy that site and like do this new thing to it.
Oh gosh, I mean there are plenty of companies out there that have rolled up content sites or other types of sites. I mean, Google just announced today that they stopped monetizing park domains. Anyone see that? AdSense for domains got shut down today. I was thrilled because